It was 9 years in the making, but we finally had a Canada versus USA best-on-best men's hockey game in international play. Today we're going to recap the action, talk about the amazing start to this game, and likely going to go down as one of the best games we've seen in modern times. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we're going to recap today looking at the Four Nations tournament and the Canada-USA game from last night. It was absolutely incredible. It lived up more than the hype that was behind it. Rivalry between these two nations has been pretty intense over the years, and we haven't had a true best-on-best on the men's side of the game in over 9 years. So this had a lot of build-up to it, and it got started with an absolutely chaotic start to hockey. It probably shocked and surprised a lot of people. Certainly got a lot of eyeballs on the TV screens for sure. But we had 3 fights to kick off the game in the first 9 seconds of play. Apparently, we found out afterwards that the Tkachuk brothers were starting with Jack Eichel for the U.S. as the forward line. The Canadians were starting the Lightning line with Brandon Hagel, Anthony Cirelli, and Braden Point. So when Matthew Tkachuk saw that Hagel was out there, he apparently has been wanting to fight him. They both play in the state of Florida. They have a heated rivalry in the NHL, and they've had a lot of battles together, and Matthew wanted to fight Hagel. So he was lined up next to him and challenged him to a fight. Brandon Hagel said, "I'm not backing down from this guy." So he accepted the fight, and we had a fight off the opening face-off, which is not something that's super common in hockey. It happens on occasion. Generally, though, there's more, you kind of see it coming. If there was, two teams that have recently played and there was a bad incident, and, it's something that's going to be like a retribution type of incident, or, you got to step up and fight to, because of what happened before. Well, these teams haven't played in 9 years. So this is a case of the Tkachuk brothers talking before the game, wanting to kind of turn the game upside down, send a message right off the bat that they're here, they're going to pound the Canadian flesh, and it's their time to win. Essentially, a lot of people are out there saying that the fights happened because of the anthem for the United States being booed by the Canadian fans in attendance. I personally think it had absolutely nothing to do with that. I'm sure the American players don't like it. And as a fan, I'm not a fan of it in either way. I don't like to see any anthem of any country being booed, but I do understand where the Canadian fans are coming from. This is all boils down to it's something that has nothing to do with hockey, whatever. Like it's nothing to do with it at all. It's completely political, where we've had U.S. President Trump threatening to take over Canada, and the Canadian fans don't like that. We've been friendly neighbors for a long time, and they don't want to hear this type of rhetoric. It's essentially what it boils down to. It has nothing to do with the game. So I honestly think that the players are likely should all understand that. The players themselves are not being booed. It's what is going on away from the game in political office. So it's unfortunate that that's spilled over to the hockey game, but unfortunately it is what it is. I'm not a fan of it, but I understand why it's going on. But I honestly think because the fact that these players planned this before the game ever started, they probably would have known the anthem was likely going to be booed. But I really don't think that's the only outlying factor here. This was a message being sent by the Americans that we're coming to take a pound of flesh. We're going to win at all costs. And even if we don't beat you in the scoreboard, we're gonna beat you to the ground. And like I said, this is 9 years in the making. The United States have been wanting to beat Canada. Canada has beaten the U.S. a lot over the years. The U.S. have had their moments for sure when they've been the better team. But at the end of the day, they feel it's their time. And a lot of people, the rhetoric going into this tournament was this is the best U.S. team ever assembled. So clearly they felt like they should be the favorites to win. They should be winning, and well, they did. They won 3-1. I've also seen a lot of people online talking about how this was a blowout, and no, it was a 2-1 game. The empty net goal, yes, it counts, but really it was a 1-goal game till the final moments here as Canada's trying to get it tied up with the goalie out. It was a very close game. If you look at the breakdown, if you're you understand analytics, there's a lot of aspects of this game that the Canadians did a lot of good things and were better at. At the end of the day, the Canadians could not generate enough high-danger chances. For me, the U.S. defense played extremely well, and that includes the forwards getting back. There wasn't a lot of east-west play that was shut down. The defensive game on the Americans was very solid. So they were able to limit the oncoming highly skilled Canadian team from not generating as much as they would normally have done against a weaker opponent. Secondly, Hellebuck in goal for the U.S. was outstanding. The only goal that McDavid scored, he had no chance on, coming in like flying at like 39 miles an hour, splits the D, goes upstairs like on the backhand. Like that, you can't fault the goalie for that. But Binnington, for Canada, and the 2 goals that he let in, you're probably kind of considered softies, the ones he should have had. I mean, it's at least one bad goal, and if you look at the previous game against Sweden, there was a bad goal. Canada has a problem, and it's between the pipes. And we knew going into this tournament that if they had a weakness, that was the main area. I mean, you could say the D-core with losing Pietrangelo before the tournament started, and then Cale Makar didn't play last night. The D-core were still pretty good, but it could be better. There's no doubt. The U.S. also missing Quinn Hughes, so it's not like they have everybody that they would want either. So at the end of the day, it really wasn't that big of a difference. I just think the Americans were just a little bit better, especially on the defensive side of things, and that's what happened. But the 3 fights right off the get-go was absolutely nuts. You had Matthew Tkachuk challenging Brandon Hagel. I was shocked, to be honest, because Matthew Tkachuk doesn't really fight a whole lot. He normally turtles and runs away. Brady's the fighter in that family, not Matthew. So to see Matthew step up and actually chuck him with Hagel, I would say that I thought Hagel did really well. He's not known for fighting either. I don't know that really there was a winner in that fight. I might give a slight edge to Hagel. Maybe I'm being biased, but I don't think Matthew beat him. I don't think that would be fair to say at all. Then you had Brady Tkachuk and Sam Bennett. I think Brady probably got the better of Bennett, but again, didn't last super long. Brady got the takedown. I would hope Brady would be able to win that fight. He's a lot bigger, stronger. So certainly there was that. And then JT Miller wanted to fight anybody, and he ends up getting Colton Parayko. I mean, that was a big mistake on his part. Parayko is a monster of a man, 6'6", 240 pounds. Miller got beat, in my opinion. So in all honesty, those 3 fights, I mean, I'm sure that it gave the Americans as well as the Canadians tons of energy. The crowd was buzzing. The eyes on this game, like, who won the most? More than anybody, more than the 2 teams on the ice, who won the most was the sport of hockey in the NHL. That was the amount of eyeballs on this game last night that normally wouldn't be was crazy. The social media interactions today all over X and Facebook and everything, insane. The amount of America, especially on the American side, because the American population is way bigger than Canada. If you're going to grow the game, there's a lot more opportunity to do it in south of the border. And the amount of people that are not, either were not fans at all or they were just casual fans, and then now you've seen posting them saying, "This is awesome. I love this. Why was I not watching hockey more? I'm going to be watching it all the time now." Like, it was amazing for the sport. Like, the theatrics in that game were off the charts. So, regardless of the score, am I disappointed Canada lost? Sure. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's great for the game. And the game is only going to be better because of it. Now, that sets up a couple of things here. One, the U.S. is now assured a spot in the championship final coming up later this week. Canada, Finland, and Sweden will all have 2 points now. So Canada lost in regulation. Sweden has 2 overtime losses, which gives them 2 points. Canada has an overtime win over Sweden, which is worth 2 points. And then the Finns have an overtime win against Sweden, which gives them 2 points. So the final games remaining, which will come tomorrow, is in the earlier game, you have Canada against Finland. The U.S. will play Sweden. If Canada defeats Finland, they will be going to the final. Now, if they win, let me clarify. If they win in regulation, it's guaranteed they'll go into the final against the U.S., and we will have a rematch of last night's crazy game. If Canada wins in overtime, then it's still quite likely Canada goes to the final, but it's not a given. You would then need Sweden to not beat the U.S. in regulation. Now, so that game would mean something at that point. So we'll see. Sweden obviously is going to, I'm sure they're hoping that their game means something. Obviously, they want to do as best they can for their country regardless, but at the end of the day, you want all the games to be meaningful so you get the absolute best outcome. So I mean, at the end of the day, the odds are favorable that we see Canada-US rematch in the final, but it is not a given. Canada has work to do. You can't take the Finns lightly. They always put up a tough battle. Kevin Lankinen was amazing for them in goal against the Swedes, and they're going to come at Canada tomorrow with everything they've got. So, to be honest, Canada will be heavily favored. In theory, they probably should win. We should get the Canada-US rematch, but it's not a given. So we're going to have to wait and see how everything turns out tomorrow. Now, Matthew Tkachuk, also injured for the United States, did not play the final. I think it was about 13 minutes of the third period. Lower body injury, something to do with his, I don't know if it's a knee or an ankle, something on his leg for sure. You see him trying to go out for a little skate and test it out. And then you see him talk to the coaches after and say, no, I'm done for the night. Also, reporters were saying when he was leaving the arena off the ice after the game, he was walking with a noticeable limp. So it's unlikely that he will play their game tomorrow against the Swedes. And then I'm sure he's going to try everything in his power to be in the lineup for the final, for sure. I suspect, regardless, even if he is not 100%, that he'll try to play through it because he's going to want to be there if they have a chance to win the championship and win the tournament here. Just like they're looking at this like a Game 7 Stanley Cup final is how they're looking at it. The U.S. really, really wants to win this tournament and be at the top of the mountain in the sport of hockey. There's no doubt. And they want to rub it in Canada's face that Canada, because Canada always says this is our game, and it has been. But, times are changing. It's just that simple. And the other thing, too, you got to remember, in my opinion, is when I was younger, like 20 years back, I knew this was always going to happen, that the U.S. at some point was going to not only catch up to Canada, but possibly surpass them for a couple of reasons. One, the population difference. Over time, as the game of hockey grows in the United States, like they have 10 times the population that Canada does. Right? So you already have a major advantage just on the number of people that can grow up and develop into athletes. So there's that. And also the other thing too, in the United States, you have more sports to compete with too, right? So I guess, but still, population difference plays a role, no doubt. Secondly, a high percentage because of look at how the NHL is laid out, right? You've got 7 teams in Canada, the rest are in the United States. So if you're a Canadian hockey player and you become good enough to make the NHL, odds are you're playing your career in the United States. Look at the amount of American players that have Canadian roots. A lot of them have a Canadian or Canadian fathers who played in the States, but they were born in the U.S. and grew up, so they consider themselves American, even though they're dual citizenship. A lot of them, even the Tkachuk brothers, their mom is Canadian. You don't get much more American than the Tkachuks, but again, married to a Canadian mother, like the father, Keith Tkachuk, right? So like there's Canadian roots all over the place. And like I said, because of that, unfortunately, we lose our talent. And that's just, it's no different than other industries. Look at entertainment, it's the same thing. A lot of top Canadian actors, comedians, musicians, they all make their way south because of opportunity. It's just the way things work. And over time, that talent then becomes Americanized and it stays down there. They have families. It's, most of them don't come back to Canada and end up growing up Canadian. It's just the way things go. So I always suspected that over time this was going to happen. And I'm not saying that Canada is solely responsible for growing the American game, but it does play a role. There's definitely part of it for sure. The other thing, though, is the Americans, in my opinion, have done a better job at their development. If you look at the United States National Team Development Program compared to how things have been run in Canada for the last 10 to 20 years, like there's a difference there. Team Hockey Canada needs to make some major adaptations. They need to study what's going on in the U.S. and other parts of the world and figure out how to make things better. We're still producing a lot of high-end hockey talent. There's no doubt we're still going to be a very strong competitive hockey nation for many, many years. But there's certainly something to be said about how things have grown in the United States in the last 20 years. So it's just the way it is. And as Canadians, we need to accept that and just know that we have lots of talent here, but we're not in a situation. This is not the 80s anymore. It's not the 90s anymore. We are not the dominant country in the game of hockey that we used to be. We're still very, very good. We're still one of the best, no doubt. But there's lots of other countries, including the United States, and if Russia was in this tournament, they'd be right there too, and Sweden and Finland. that are all saying like, hey, we're just as good. We're neck and neck with you. And in some cases, we're going to beat you. And it's just the way she goes. So it was a heck of a game. Like I said, we're going to be talking about this game from last night for a long, long time. What game can you remember started off with 3 fights in 9 seconds? Like I said, no matter what your take on how the game went, who scored the goals, why one team won versus the other, at the end of the day here, hockey is better for that game last night. The sport is going to grow. The amount of eyeballs on that was incredible. Like I said, the interactions that I've seen and even been a part of on X and other social media platforms today and last night, it's insane the amount of people chiming in that you've never seen talk hockey before, which is phenomenal. The amount of really big social media accounts and like high-ranking people throughout the U.S. government and everybody else talking about this game last night that took place in Montreal in a 4-nation tournament that's not the Olympics even. Like, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. This tournament people were skeptical it was going to be like an all-star game. I think that crowd has been shut up now. Do you think they're going to play like that in an all-star game? Holy jumpins. There were some players at times looked like roadkill after the big hits that were thrown. Especially, I remember looking at Brady Tkachuk laying out Drew Doughty. Like, wowzers. Like, that was insane. It was a heck of a game. So, the U.S. deserved to win. At the end of the day, they were the better team. And I know Canada's hoping to get their opportunity for a rematch. So, again, like I said, it was one of the best games. It was 9 years in the making. Absolutely incredible. This tournament has been far exceeding expectations. And I certainly hope that we have the rest of the tournament is just as good. And I want to see round 2 of Canada-US. Even if Canada loses, the entertainment value and the growth of the sport that's going to come from it is immeasurable, incredible. So again, I want to know what your thoughts are on these two teams. Obviously, weigh in if you want on the anthem booing, weigh in on the rosters and how they're made up and who's going to win. Let me know what you think down in the comments. We'll discuss further. I'll be back later with another video recapping any other news or rumors around the NHL today. Thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you next time.